Hi everybody, I'm Don Dickson and I want to thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be talking about the specifics of how to find the exact spot in deep water through our mapping and interpretation, where we're going to arrive at the fish. Okay, as we begin this discussion now, I want to explain that I have received just over the last few days 5 or 6 or maybe 7 questions through my email address that basically ask the same question. Now, the way we're going to attack this is I'm going to read you one of the questions that I got. I have it here on my iPad, and I've received a bunch of them, all about the same subject. It's said a different way, but it's always the same subject. People are having trouble finding the spot, finding the exact spot where they want to put their lures. So let me read you a question here. This is from a subscriber, Jimmy King. Writes to me, "Hope you are doing well," referring to my recent cancer. He said, "But don't want to be a bother, but watch the video on your palm de terre on that muskie tournament, and you referred to the sharper break." He said, "I still don't see it. I see a lot of contour lines that are really sort of close to each other, but I'm not seeing what you saw, where you caught the fish. It's tough fishing," he writes, "if I can't interpret what these contour lines are telling me. This is the most difficult part of structure fishing for me. It's killing me, coach." He's getting frustrated. "Where is the sharper break? Maybe I just don't know what the heck I'm looking for. It's confusing to me. I'm thanking you in advance for your help. Get well soon." Okay, that's just an example. I get these kind of questions all the time. And it's hard for me to answer a question on a text or a little email back. I'd be writing letters every day. It's too much involved. However, when I started thinking about what I have done in the past, I look backwards on my videos and I see that I've spent 15 different videos specifically on that subject. So I thought, why should I redo it? I can just take pieces from stuff that I've already done. In fact, I pulled out one which we're going to use today that explains it in total detail. I have to admit, when I looked at it, I turned to my wife and I said, that was pretty good. Almost anybody can understand that. And sometimes I also catch myself, I do a lot of repeating. But that was ingrained in me from Buck Perry when he said, if you're teaching, you have to repeat. You have to continue to repeat until people get the picture. Now, one of the problems today, I am totally convinced, is we have developed, I say we, the industry has developed this electronic ability to be able to get on your iPad or get on most of the charts today, and depth sounders can plug this right into their depth sounder. But these electronic maps that you can call up pretty much from any state, whether it's a reservoir or a lake of any type of significance, you can find a contour map of it on your iPad or on your depth sounder. It's available. Navionics is what I use. There's a bunch of others that are out there, and it doesn't matter. But the problem comes in today is people are starting to rely on this partial, what I call nothing more than a general interpretation of what's out there in your lake or in your reservoir. It doesn't give you the details. Now, when my partner and I fished that Palm de Terre muskie tournament back in whatever it was, 1978, we had a paper contour map that was a real detailed map. And it showed that sharper break that my subscriber here has been looking for. But I wish I did still have it, but I don't have that map. I have no idea what we ever did with it. I think after we showed it to Buck, I think I actually left it at his place. But at any rate, I don't have it to show you, but I could see that sharper break. I looked at the overall structure, but I could see that sharper break up on the feeder stream side. But when you pull up what I showed you on the original video of that with Navionics, you don't see a sharper break. It's not shown. And that's the norm rather than the exception. Most of the time, you're not going to see it. So these electronic aids that we have today, the ability to call up and look at a total electronic contour map of almost any lake or any reservoir, it's a great thing. But as far as finding the details, it's just not going to give it to you. Just like that picture on Pomme de Terre. Here's how you find the spot. I'm going to share this with you by tapping into something I shot 2 years ago, which gives you the absolute 4-step process that will put you on that spot every time. It's called detail mapping, and there's no shortcut for it. And as Buck used to say, I hate to say it this way, but years ago, there weren't too many women fishing, men were fishing. And he used to always say, mapping and interpretation is the separation point between the men and the boys in fishing. Today we add the women and the girls. A lot of women fishing today. But his point was, if you really want to be a great fisherman, you have to get good at this. And the idea is you can't interpret something you don't have a detailed map of. How are you going to interpret something you don't know what's there? You have to first find out. And we can do that through our procedures. And you're going to find out, if you haven't seen this video, I want you to watch it. And it's going to give you the answers, not only the fellow that wrote in, but the other 4 or 5, the answers to their questions are in this same video. So here's a little shot back. I think it's a year and a half ago, something like that. But it was in real detail, all the reasons why and so forth, that we do everything. But the procedure, 4-step procedure, will put you on that spot every time. So watch this video, and I'm going to show you how to arrive at that spot, not only in Pomme de Terre, but any of the other lakes or reservoirs or rivers you decide to fish. First thing we got to know when we come to a structure that we either saw on a contour map, or we saw by following a weed line, or we through our observation of terrain we saw a point of land coming out, so we found this bar. First thing we got to find out is, will it produce fish? Do you remember in our earlier discussions we said you can have structure and no fish? Can't have fish without structure, but you can have structure without fish. You see, structure by definition is the bottom of the lake, different than the surrounding bottom area. So you could have a bar that reaches out into the lake, breaks off at 8 feet into a 15-foot flat, and runs for a mile till it gets to the river channel. It's a bar, it's a structure, but it won't produce fish. Fish in that lake don't know that bar exists. So being aware that all structure won't produce fish, the first question we have to ask when we come to a structure is, will it produce? So how do I find out if a structure will produce? Here's what I do. I simply get up on the crown of the bar, the shallowest section of the bar, and I turn straight out towards the deep water, out into the lake. And I watch my depth sonder as I'm going. And my question is, does it lead all the way? Now we know it leads to the shallows because it leads to the shoreline. So we got that part of it done. But does it lead to deep water? That's what I have to find out. But I'm going to find out just by making one pass. Does it lead all the way or doesn't it? So once I establish that, I've got my first answer. I also have to answer this question. What is the final break into deep water? If you remember, in our study on structure, we said for a structure to really be halfway decent, it must at least have a final break somewhere in the area of 14 to 17 feet. If it breaks shallower than that, I'm not interested. So as I'm making this pass out to find out if this hypothetical structure produces, does it lead all the way? I also am noticing where it breaks, paying special attention to the final break line. If it goes out and breaks at 7 feet and then breaks again at 10 and at 11 feet breaks into the channel, I'm not too interested. The final break was 11 feet. That's the last target I have that I can fish, 11 feet. I'm not too happy with that. I'm going to pass that up. I want that final break to be somewhere between 14 and 17 feet or deeper. And a matter of fact, the deeper it is, the better we like it. See, you got to get a fish to 27 feet before you can get him to 22 feet. You got to get him to 22 before you can get him to 17. You got to get him to 17 before you can get him to 14. So there will be times where you catch fish 27 feet if you have that feature, that spot, that break, where you'd never get them up to 14 feet. So the deeper that final break is, the better we like it. But as we get back to the procedure, which is what I'm talking about, I can make one pass out this bar and establish if it leads all the way, number one. And number two, if I'm watching my depth sonder, I'll be aware of any and all break lines that exist. And I'll pay special attention to where is the final break into deep water. If it's 14 to 17 feet or deeper, I've got a productive structure. So on one pass out into the lake off of this bar, I've established that it will produce fish. Now when I saw the deep water, I didn't have to find, at that point I didn't need to find the deepest water in the area. I just needed to know, did it lead from the shallows to the deep? So in one pass, I've got the answers that I need. This structure will produce fish. So now I can afford to do my detail work, spend a little time getting to detail this structure because I already know it'll produce fish. If in that first pass it didn't lead all the way, or it broke at a really shallow depth, 8 feet into the channel, I'm moving on. I'm not spending any time doing any detail of a structure that won't produce. So now in one pass, we've got a lot of answers already. What's the next thing I do? Okay. Keep in mind, as I was rolling out there, I established where the break lines were. Let's say I had break line at 17 and then I had a drop off at 25 feet into the channel. I need to discover the size and the shape of this structure now. That's what I need to find out next. I know it'll produce, but how big is it? What's the size? What's the shape? Well, if you remember, it's the break lines that form structure. If we didn't have break lines, we just have a flat. We'd have no fish. So it's the break lines that are actually forming this structure that we're looking at. So if I want to find out the size and the shape of it, obviously I just have to follow the break line. So in this case, my next step is I'm going to get on the primary break line, which we established on our hypothetical here, 17 feet. I'm going to follow it around the entire structure. And I'm going to be sure to notice and throw markers on any unusual feature that I come to. Remember the last time we talked, we said most break lines don't go just in a straight line. They'll be going along in a sort of a straight line, and all of a sudden there'll be a turn out, a turn back in, and that created a finger. We talked about fingers the other day. Most bars have multiple fingers. You remember we established that when fish move on structure, they're going to pause and eventually stop at a break on that structure, a break on the break line. So as we're following this primary break line around, when I come to a finger, I'm going to throw a marker. And by the way, I will always throw it to the inside, to the shallower side of the break line. And I like to have it removed 10 or 12 feet inside the break line. It's still a great reference, but when I come to fishing, I'll still be able to fish my break line. I don't want to throw the marker on the break line, then I can't fish it. I have to pick up the marker. So I always throw it to the inside, normally about 10 feet. And continue to follow that around. When I come to the end of the bar, when you come to the end of the bar, you'll know you're at the end of the bar. You got to turn back and start heading back into the shore, following that break line. You throw a marker into the bar. Let's say you're coming down this side and there's another big finger sticks out. Marker. So now I've got this bar. I've got 3 markers out. But I now pretty much know the size and the basic shape of this structure. Now, if I have multiple break lines, in this case we said we had a second break line, 25 feet. I have to follow that break line in the same exact manner as I followed the first. I'm also making sure, as I'm following this deeper break line, that it sort of contours about the same as the first break line. It's shaped about the same. Some cases,
all of a sudden there'll be a finger that sticks out and heads half a mile out in the lake before it turns around and comes back in that didn't show up on the primary break line, and there's all your fish way out there. So when you're following the drop-off, the last break line, you must take special care, because in the end, your contact point is going to be somewhere along that break line, the drop-off, the final break line into deep water. So once I've done that, in some cases, in most cases, the shape is going to be about the same in the deeper water as it was in the primary. Occasionally it will be different. If it's different in a big time way, I'm going to throw an additional marker or two. But if it's pretty much the same, I'm not going to throw any additional markers. I'm just going to feed off my 17-foot, my primary break line markers for the size and the shape. Now, the next step, after I do that, I will go back in on the bar and I'll get up on the crown in a shallow section, maybe 4 or 5 feet of water, get up on the crown of the bar, stand up on the platform, front platform of my boat, and look out at my markers. And since I was sort of drawing a mental picture of that structure as I was mapping it, and now looking at the markers and the distances and so on and so forth, I can pretty much sit down and draw a picture of what this structure looks like. Now, one of the things that makes it easier, I want to make sure you get this, I'm right-handed. So I'm always fishing out the right hand or the left-hand side of the boat. My meter's on the left and my tiller handle's back here, my left hand. My right hand, my power hand, is my fishing hand. So when I'm mapping a structure, I want the structure to be over here on my left. I don't want to go to the other side and start. If it was on my right, I'd be looking at my meter here and then looking up to the right, the shoreline side, and then I'm back here looking at the meter and trying to follow this break line, looking back. That's awkward. Now, if you're left-handed, and left-handed you're fishing out the right side of the boat, you want it over here. But if you're right-handed, I want it, let's put it this way, I want my structure that I'm mapping to always be on my inside, on my left side. That way I can follow the break line, look up, I see the shoreline, I got my meter, I see the break line, I see distances, I got sightings, everything is right here. I can see it in my mind's eye. And remember, we're going to end up drawing a top view of this structure when we're done. But remember, a couple of weeks ago I talked about the importance of being able to mentally convert that top view into a side view so we can fish this thing properly. So in order to make it easier to see this thing in our mind's eyes, keep the structure on your inside. Whichever your inside is, keep that structure there as you're following the break lines. And you'll have a better picture. So when I'm standing up, I look out there at my markers. I already pretty much know what it looks like. I'll sit down and draw me a little dotted line as my break line, 17 feet. Then I'll draw another dotted line which is sort of followed the same track as the 17 foot. And I had 3 markers out, end of the bar and 2 fingers on our hypothetical. So now I go to the next step, which is to take soundings off of those features. Keep in mind now, when fish hit this structure, they won't just hit it anywhere. They're going to hit it at one of those 3 features. We only have 3 features to choose from. So now we got to find out which one's the longest, narrowest, sharpest, deepest break to the deepest water in the area. There's our spot, right? So you were listening a few days ago. You were listening, I hope. Okay, so now when we're taking soundings, we're searching for our deepest water in the area, because that's a #1 thing of importance, right? Home of the fish, deepest water in the area. So we're going to take soundings off of each one of these markers to establish which one leads to the deepest water in the area. Let's say the end of the bar leads to 60 feet and the other 2 fingers lead to 40 feet. Well, the end of the bar is my spot, because there's my fish, deepest water in the area. Most of the time it's not quite that easy though. So if I take my soundings and the deepest water in the area is 50 feet and it's 50 feet all the way around the bar, then, remember our study last time we talked, then I'm looking for which one breaks the deepest. Well, in our hypothetical, it all broke at 25 feet. That secondary or the drop-off all broke at 25 feet. into the deepest water. So now which one? Which one breaks the sharpest? If they all broke from 25 to 30, 25 to 30, 25 to 30, then which one will it be? The one that sticks out the furthest. I hope you remember that study, because you want to establish the contact point for sure. Not only is it important to fish the last place we're fishing and checking all of our speeds, but when fish do move, that contact point in many cases is going to dictate which way the fish will go when they do move shallower on that structure. Could go to the right side, could go to the left side, depending on some stuff we'll discuss later. But you have to establish the contact point. In many cases, it'll be pretty easy. The deepest break to the deepest water is right there. There's my fish. Throw your finger in the water. Now, all that being said, we can interpret the spots. We can interpret our structure. We can see the structure now. We got a map of it. We know from looking at the map what we got to do. We got to fish the 17-foot break line. We got to fish the 25-foot break line. We got to cast the shallows. We got to cast the contact point in the end. But now we know how we can do all of that. We know what we have sitting out here. So detail mapping, I can't even begin to tell you how important it is. Now, just to finish up, I saw something that I wrote down. I haven't talked about it in a long time, but I'll mention it here since we're talking about a bar, our most common structure. I wrote down here on the last page of this little thing I wrote 25 years ago, detailed interpretation. General rule of thumb in our detailed interpretation. When we're talking about a bar, narrow ridge-like is preferred over a broad bar. Simply put, the fish see it better. It's preferred over a broad bar. An irregular bar is better or is preferred over a uniform bar. More choices for the fish. A crowned bar is preferred over an uncrowned bar. Just a little something I thought I'd throw in. And in addition, when I leave a structure after I've done a detailed map and fished it, I will always take shoreline sightings. It's just habit with me. I know we got our waypoints down, all that kind of stuff with your fancy gear that you can plug it in, but somebody told me not too long ago that it's only accurate within 9 feet. Well, within 9 feet is not good enough for me. I want to be more exact. I really do. And if I have 2 line sights this direction and 2 line sights on the shore, 90 degrees, where those 2 things intersect, that spot, my anchoring position, I will always have that. I won't leave a structure until I get an anchoring position, assuming I have a good anchoring position. I'm not going to leave until I have good sights, and I'll mark those sights down on my map. As long as they don't tear the house down and the upstairs window or the flagpole and the house over on this thing, as long as they don't take it down, I'm good. But at any rate, you know how long it takes to make a good detail map? 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops. And you'll never, ever lose it. You'll have it forever if it's your home lake. Take the time. If you're fishing a new lake, take 10 or 15 minutes, do a detailed map, and then go to fish, and I promise you, you'll catch a whole lot more fish than you would if you didn't do that detailed map. It's that important. It really is. And I'm excited. I've got a lot more coming on this. We're going to show some navionics. We're going to show some real contour maps, some physical contour maps, and point out some spots and then show you my detailed map of some of those spots and how different it was from what the map showed us. Just so you get the idea, you can't shortcut this one. Detailed mapping is a necessity if you want to really be a great fisherman.
Okay. I hope you got out of that video the importance of the procedure, the process. It's been simplified down to 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all you have to do. But if you do it and you continue to do it regularly every time you come to a structure, you'll end up catching 100 times more fish than you're used to, period. You're going to find the spots. The process will find you the spots. So I hope you get that. Now we're going to be doing a lot more on map and interpretation over the next few weeks for sure. And I'm really going to sort of hammer you with it to where everybody understands it and knows what to do about it. All right, so I also mentioned I was going to give you an update about my health. I was informed just a few days ago that the quickest way to remission with my type of cancer is bone marrow transplant. When I heard that, I got a little bit nervous, you know. Then we tried to find out as much as we could about it. And but 3 days ago, we went to see the surgeon in Orlando. And he explained to us how it all worked. And boy, when he was done, I didn't want to do it. It sounds like it's really a rough deal. And you get really, really sick. And you spend about 4 weeks in a hospital. And they strip all your cells from you. I mean, where you have zero immunity. And when he was done, he said, now that you understand it, and that was about an hour-and-a-half consultation. And I hadn't said anything. I hadn't reacted. I didn't want to be a sissy about it. And I thought, well, if this is the quickest way to remission, I guess maybe I'd do it. And then he announced to my wife and me that he had never operated on anyone 78. He had never done this operation. Anyone 78, and he'd been in the business like 10 or 15 years. And John Hopkins guy, by the way, he's an expert. And he said the thing is there's a close proximity to the risk and the reward once you get past a certain age. And he said, now your oncology guy thought you were in such good shape that you could pass for, I think he said mid 60s. I liked that. That was good. He said, but your body is 78. He said, so I'm going to suggest that no, we don't do the transplant. We stay on the medication. You're going to end up getting totally into remission. It's just going to take longer. So that was okay with me. And he also then ended by telling me that we already are in first phase of remission. I have had some remission. And I still feel good. I don't really feel sick. I feel tired. My arm still hurts, but it's broken up here. So there's a reason. That's going to take probably a year to heal. But I feel pretty good. And of course, my wife takes good care of me. So we're getting along with it. And I really miss my fishing. And I miss talking to you. I miss doing what I want to do. But I think we can use this time to good effect. And I'm going to try to set up these videos and deal with a few questions that touch on these subjects. And hopefully when we're done with it, you're going to have a total understanding of where we want to make that cast, where we want to put our lure in deep water to catch that school of fish. So with all that being said, I want you to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. Love to have you on board with us. In addition, this whole area of mapping and interpretation and arriving at the where in fishing. If you don't have my daily guide to fishing success, I'm going to suggest that you get it. And all you got to do is email my wife, and she'll make sure that you get all the info and get that e-fork. So with all that being said, thanks again for being with me, and we'll see you the next time.